the Almost Daily Zencast. Hosted by the incorrigible Mr. Zappa. Let's talk Trump.
Couldn't have done it worse if you had planned it on purpose. That's my assessment. And I'm sure I'm not unique amongst critics. But I want to assert and put it out there for anybody listening who might be coming to this show from a recently pro-45 position. Because, you know, the straws, and I did pick plural for a reason, the straws that are going to break the camels' backs, all plural, are hitting the haystack now, friends. As evidenced in that there's now, it's new to me, I'm sure it's not new to the political environment for most people who are more invested on the quote-unquote conservative side. But it's new to me as a sort of impartial observer of all the echo chambers. There's now a conservative anti-Trump movement. Huzzah! I want golf clapping and kids going, yay! So that it's like absurd and serious at the same time as a sound effect. For those moments where it's like, I'm only applauding you because Jesus Christ. So hooray for them. Welcome to the club, kids. They, through some publication that I had previously, hitherto, never heard of, whose name I can't recall right now, and I don't have a tab open to, but I saw through Twitter first. Twitter has already effectively taken over the world. And now we get all our news through Twitter. And I'm partially sort of pretending to boycott it by having an account but hardly ever using it. But something on Facebook forced me to go to Twitter to get like the source thing because I wanted to share it. This conservative, apparently overtly anti-Trump media outlet broke down Trump's exaggerations / lies about coronavirus testing kits. Now, I'm used to be, I am currently, I would argue, recovering from being one of those kinds of people that loves to get nitpicky and loves to like dig down deep and get into the us versus them arguing talking points on whatever side of a ideologically defined division conflict line I might find myself in. But being someone that strives and works to actually practice what I preach sometimes, if not all the time, I really work hard to avoid doing that now. So I don't have my own list in front of me. But if you Google Trump, lies, and test kit, I assure you, or if you include COVID-19, Trump, lies, COVID-19, separated by commas, thank you very much. And you're going to have to, if you have to use like the new post-Google natural language query style, then you have to write like Trump lies about COVID-19 test kits. But you'll find it. It's there. It's documented. It's verified. This emergency has, in my humble opinion, as an impartial observer, not trying to belittle or defame him as a president, but rather honestly state my concerns about his behavior and his effectiveness and whatnot. I believe that he's getting a little wackier with time. His fake tan has definitely gotten weirder looking over time. His hair, while the most consistent thing about him, trademark, hashtag, Trump's hair, the most consistent thing about him. It too, despite being, in my opinion, as an observer, the most consistent thing about Donald J. Trump, is starting to look weirder and weirder and start to fall apart. There was some recent event / thing that he was at where there was one particular photograph that came out of that was like, it became the photograph that like the AP Wire and a bunch of news sources decided to use redundantly. And in it, part of his weird, complex side comb over is parted wonky, like wonkier than it should be. There's a weird gap. And you see an underlayer of cross-grain hair. And by that I mean literally like you've got like a layer of thin Trump hair that's been sprayed down over a different layer that's previously combed in a completely different direction. So that the two are overlapping and kind of hiding each other's beginnings and end. I think is why the maneuver. There is, by the way, I have a copy somewhere, either on my phone or on my iPad or on my desktop, somewhere, of a delightfully, gloriously simple meme that's like steps for the Trump comb overdue. And it's literally accurate looking directional arrows with numerical, like, in this order, please, numerical numbers, indicating the order in which, please, to comb your hair, so that you too can have delightfully Trumptopian multi-part comb over that the president... Now, what product he uses to lock that shit down, I would like to know. If some bold and daring real-life journalist wants to get on that story, I would do my best to make it go viral. But anyways, no one's helping me go viral yet. I digress. That's not true. Y'all listeners, I love you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Today on Good Morning Trumptopia, a serious question for everyone here listening now and in whatever future this show might have. I want this to be here now, that on Tuesday, March 24th at 7:59 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo asked the bold question no one else is asking. Did Trump fumble this unforced error, like clusterfuck of dropping every ball imaginable regarding COVID-19 and a fast, effective, truly preventative response? Like, did he do that on purpose? Question mark? Because it kind of looks and feels like you couldn't have planned a better on-purpose plan to make sure that COVID doesn't wipe everybody out, but certainly gets a wide enough splash that it is inarguably, scary sounding, so that then scary, fear-peddling, fear-manipulating, fear-mongering propaganda can actually have traction and work and not sound or appear ridiculous and over the top. Question mark, question mark, question mark. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm asking you, dear listeners, doesn't it? Isn't that explanation seem like, makes me go, because you couldn't have written a better plot for a movie about a nefarious, bad guy installed in office that gets away with doing something in public that's outrageous and makes for as much chaos confusion and propagation of the disease that is the subject of the pandemic concern in the first place. Now, I'm not pretending to be a conspiracy theorist. And I've already ran the gambit of the conspiracy theories I've seen literally adamantly being argued about in favor of by some and, obviously against by those around them. And that might not be an exhaustive list. There's probably more. But what I am surprised by is that very few people are asking whether or not Trump can, could, should, would be asked and pressed and held accountable. Plenty of people are calling for him to be held accountable for the way in which he has handled the Trumptopian response, the whole of government response, which is a whole lot of saying one thing and doing almost the exact opposite, and then pretending not to have had, and then promising the original thing is happening, despite it probably not actually happening, and then finally, eventually, getting around to doing that thing, despite hemming and hawing and bullshitting and delaying and doing other things first. The level of revisionist self-revision of his own history is mind-blowing. He's always done this, mind you. I want this to be understood. If you detach yourself from your hate or your love of him, and you take a big step back, and you take a big history of Donald Trump class that's, readily available in real-life historical facts, you will see that he's always thrown so many random throws. Like, he has always utilized his own bullshit machine. He's always created his own fake news. From long before fake news was a household word that anybody and everybody had an opinion about, Trump would generate his own fake news for himself. And that's a documented historical fact. He used to, I'm not making this up. And unless the sources that have convinced me that they were in fact documenting real facts were all being hijacked by whatever deep state anti-Trump tyranny at play. It's the reason I confirm that I think some of these statements are real, despite whatever argument about the corruption of media you could bring, is that I was around, I was alive, I was paying attention to Donald Trump long before he ever ran for president. I remember him in movies and TV shows and on TV, from before he saved his own crumbling career with The Apprentice. And, for example, I remember when this was a scandal and that he acknowledged yet pretended didn't exist and denied all at once. But he used to call up people, depending on his needs, journalists, etc., and people people with, let's say, a value to him and some scheme he may be cooking up, and pretend to be someone else representing Donald Trump, and would literally, pretend to be a manager or a hype man or some kind of booking agent, and he would, totally pretending to be someone else, talk to these targeted folks, the people he had chosen that to pull this weird maneuver on, and pretending not to be himself, praise himself to them in some conversational manner in order to butter them up and or get what he wanted. And that's just one of many real life examples that can be looked up and confirmed that existed long before. He's just always said whatever crazy bullshit he wants to say. Now, as I've always tried to remind folks who might be a little bit blind with rage and not wanting to think about Trump clearly, he's not an idiot. He speaks to an audience that perhaps culturally, let's say, has their own super relaxed, super anti-intellectual, but not necessarily inherently stupid way of speaking. It would be, I'm a love everybody and get along kind of guy, even though I'm the first to admit that I have flaws and failings and an ego that gets in my way, and I never pretend to live up to that. And I say all this with respect and admiration for all people and the sort of like baseline level that is equal for all folks. My point is not about, how Trump supporters talk. Let's not get sidetracked, right? It's like when he's speaking a language that a large enough group of people understand, and he's willing to take whatever guff the world will give him for associating with that group of people. But he's making choices that are not about. They're not being caused by his quote unquote stupidity. He's making choices that are being caused or motivated or originate in some complex agenda, which includes bullshitting his own base and bullshitting everyone around that could be labeled his opposition. I digress, though. Something funny. Let me tell you something to kind of clear the air and like shift gears, and then we'll play some music. Something funny this morning. I was sitting down, getting ready to set up for the show today, and I thought I'd check the headlines, see what was going on in the world, and on the Apple News thingy, the very first story, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was from the Washington Post, is a big overview about the impacts of social distancing. And we're getting a lot of that, right? Like, social distancing. It's the new norm. And that's a whole nother thing. But the bit that was funny to me, that was cutesy-wootsy and aw, and weird and like kind of heartwarming and a little heartbreaking too because of nostalgia and stuff, is that the first picture on the top of the day, here's your headlines, here's what's important, here's the news, is a picture of a marquee at a venue. And I, without having to read the words, I knew the marquee, I knew the angle, I knew the building, I knew the venue. And I thought, I must be projecting. I must be imagining it and assuming that I'm right. And then I clicked through and scrolled down and found the photo. And indeed, looking at the full, it was a marquee reading, social distancing, we're in this together, ... apart. And this is an image by, photo credit, Mario Tama, /AFP, /Getty Images. All respect to their media ownership of that. But I'm just going to read the caption here, and we'll leave it at that as far as what's going on in the article. The shuttered Hayward Theater displays the message, social distancing, we're in this together, apart, as the coronavirus pandemic continues on March 23rd in Los Angeles. The Hayward Theater is a delightful venue right in downtown Midtown, very close to, stone's throw away from MacArthur Park, which was, curiously, randomly, to my fun delight in watching, recently highlighted and featured as a futuristic setting in Westworld. Whoa! Also, yeah, by the way, Westworld, I'm a big nerd. So I'm going to have to do a whole episode just talking about, like, my thoughts and opinions on what's happened and is now happening in that show. But we'll come back to that. Just want to give a shout out. I doubt anyone from the Hayworth is listening, but the fun, quirky, nostalgic, made me giggle, made me feel a little warm and fuzzy, but also a little tore up. I spent, and I don't think anyone can sue me for speaking. It's a fact. And I know everybody, at least I think I know everybody involved with the Hayworth. And if there's some new ownership, hey, this is from before you came along. But for almost a year, I worked and sort of almost maybe technically lived there because they had this like the Hayworth is a brilliant venue. There's multiple stages there, and one of the weird, lovely little gems of the building at large in which the Hayworth Theater is in, it's all one big building, and it should be a historical landmark. It should be made a historical landmark, and the Hayworth Theater venue should become, as well as the restaurant there. I can't remember the name of the restaurant. It's an internationally famous mariachi Mexican food entertainment dining venue with live mariachi bands like all the time. And it is, I think, I could be mistaken, but I think the oldest such restaurant on the West Coast. I could be wrong about that. But they're super famous, and it's all part and parcel. It's all one big, gorgeous building that looks kind of meh and blah and whatever from the outside. But on the inside is lots of really cool features. One of which, one of the many gems, the restaurant being one of the other, is this beautiful office slash, it could also be like a built-in condominium. If I ever own that building, knock on wood, I would love to suddenly become a media mogul and just have too much money to burn, and having sold some movies, etc., that I may or may not ever finish actually writing. But if you're out to buy movies, I've got some great ones that I could sell you right now, even though I haven't finished writing them. Because it's all up in here, and just hire me, and then we just make them happen in this billion-dollar movie empire. But I digress. I would buy this building. I would renovate every single theater venue, because there's the downstairs, big performance space, which is actually one of those spaces that's simultaneously big enough for a pretty decent sized crowd, so you can get like the crowd vibe, and is also curiously compact and small and intimate enough that you get like this pretty small, like really decent, and this is a great thing, right, in theater. Like, you get this really strong sense of audience intimacy. It is simultaneously like you get a lot of energy, but it's also everyone's got a great seat, and it's just all really up close and personal. Great venue. They had been closed down for a little while, and I don't know what happened. This is after I left. But I worked there. I gave a lot of sweat, blood, enthusiasm, and a few tears here or there. And I was also fortunate enough to because of my position there as the theater technician, one of two theater technicians at the beginning, and then that fellow eventually moved on to other things. So then I was like one of just me being the theater technician for a hot minute there. I was honored and blessed to get involved with, get to know some other theater professionals, and got to go on a trip to the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh with a show that came through the Hayworth. In a perfect world, I would either live very close to the Hayworth, or the Hayworth would be way closer to me, and I would still be working there because I really like that. And I would be able to work there and at the other theater that I work at, because they would both be much closer to each other and where I live. But this is not a perfect world. And I just wanted to share with that because it was just, I don't know, there's something moving about seeing the marquee. I used to climb up a ladder and, endanger my well-being because it's a precarious, we didn't have a tall enough ladder. I digress. I used to put the words on that marquee, as well as clean the bathrooms, stock the bar, program the lighting, hang and rehang and focus all the lighting instruments, help, troubleshoot technology problems in the sound setup, and the whole shebang. It was awesome. But anyways, I said I'd play some music after that, and let's hear a little bit more of the delightful, loopy fun of the very fictional, very not real DJ, a literary character known as DJ Zed. That was the completely fictional DJ Zed with a track from the early years, Volume 2, entitled Moments Till Midnight. So if you want to read that article that I was having that weird, unnecessarily long, nostalgic flashback about this venue, theater that I worked at, God, it's going on like 8 years ago now, I think. It was in a Washington Post article. I'd read you a link, but I bet if you go to WashingtonPost.com, you should be able to find it. The article, which I saw/read through my Apple News app on my Macintosh. No one's paying me for those. I'm just letting you know what devices I use. The article is called U.S. Could Become Next Epicenter of Pandemic, Health Officials Warns. And it's part of their coronavirus live updates thing. So if I'm understanding correctly, the Washington Post is, most of their content is by subscription. Apparently it's about $6 a month. Just letting you know. But this article and several others are part of a series that are being provided outside of the paywall for free to make sure that the public that is curious and wants to read from their outlets can read all about the coronavirus. And it's an interesting article. I just had to talk about it because the Hayworth and my heart called out to it. It's sad to know, and I wanted to go off on another tangent, which I feel kind of upset at myself for not having spoken out about more recently. But when the news came, however many days ago / weeks ago that it was now, that Broadway, that Times Square was effectively a ghost town, and that Broadway was shutting down all of its productions, that all plays being performed on Broadway were to close until, and I don't remember when, but however long. I think it's mid-April or something. That was tough, man. As a theater person, as a lifelong theater nerd, a theater enthusiast, a theater practitioner, a theater amateur, a theater professional, a theater goer, a theater performer, a theater technician, all of these labels apply literally in real life to me, as well as fictionally in my literary context. I was just torn apart. It was really, really brutally sad. And it's the kind of thing that, like, I think that's why I didn't talk about it until I felt distanced enough from it to be able to chat without getting all sidetracked. But if I lived in New York, I would have gone the day that news broke to Theater Row, to, Times Square to my favorite New York venues may or may not have been in my fictional life living in New York, which I've never lived in New York, by the way. I have been to New York on many occasions for various really weird reasons, up to and including professional theater, which I was, paid to be in New York for the run of a professional play. It's very exciting stuff, on which I was a technician. I digress. It was tragic and sad, and it's brutal and rough to see the outcry throughout magical Facebook land from all those out there who are professional, semi-professional, part-time professional, amateur, and just students of the craft, the art, the business, and how much they're getting impacted. That whole community, that whole demographic of people who work in this still rather large, it has to be acknowledged, entertainment industry segment, but that, as a segment is sort of no longer, considered the premier elite, top of the world tier of entertainment stuff, right? In terms of plurality, in terms of people. But anyways, it's been rough on them, man, as rough on them as it has been in any other business sector that's been impacted by this global shutdown. Of which we opened up the show asking the question, is it just me, or does it not feel like the actions taken by this president and this administration are the perfect shitstorm, clusterfuck set of actions so that you can be like, wow, that was a just redonkulous screw the pooch fumble. It's like you couldn't have scripted the wrestling match better. You know what I mean? The guy who's got to take a dive, who looks like he's going to save the world, but ultimately all he really did was help everyone get exposed. Again, I am not making accusations. I am asking the question. If you really sat down, I don't care which side of the debate you're on. If you even, let's say you adamantly don't care about Donald Trump. Just set that down for a hot minute. You avidly support and admire Donald Trump. You avidly hate and despise Donald Trump. Set it all down for a minute and ask yourself, is this person really that stupid and and some people, plenty of people will enthusiastically say yes and then just continue to rage hate him and wish ill upon him and move on with whatever technical things they need to do with their lives. And others are obviously going to say that no, not whatsoever. He's suffering a character assassination by the corrupt, evil left conglomerate corporate media empire that wants to and always wanted to oust him for no other reason than he is Trump. And I'm like, some of that is true, absolutely, but also he has not earned anyone's respect that he could have tried to earn. Let's be frank. The only people who love and admire and respect him are those deeply caught up in his cult of personality, brain seduction, brain energy. I don't want to call it brainwashing, right? But people have been seduced. Those who are the, quote, unbeatable core of his base, or undeniable, or unswayable, unseducible, they have been seduced by him. And for whatever reason, he makes them feel good. Because it's, cult of personality, social dynamics are about feeling like you could be that person, or that person could be you, and that you could you could associate with them through some magical mutuality that you have that makes them admirable in your eyes, and you seemingly important to them, but also just in your own eyes, right? The object of the cult of personality only has to appear to give a fuck about those who are seduced by the cult of personality. He doesn't actually have to for it to work. And let's give him credit where credit is due. He seems to either understand that really well at a sort of, maybe a sort of intuitive, his whole life has worked this way, and he grew up watching people whose lives operated this way. The charisma of a cult of personality vis-a-vis power. And or he's being guided as a puppet, as a political puppet, to learn the ropes and refine whatever previously, learned or inherited skill set in this department. So he's getting sort of slightly weirdly better at it. I don't know. It's all a bunch of open questions. But I digress. And also, in the interest of keeping episodes actually as slightly shorter as I keep saying I'm going to, I'm going to leave you with this thought. Within the limits of... I wanted to hit up something else that I had seen earlier, but I just went off on that thing. We should, I think, I'm going to leave this, all of you, dear listeners, with this thought. We should challenge the Trump base to confront Trump's own duality, right? His own hypocrisy. Not so much, we need to choose our battles, I guess is the thing I'm going to land on to try to wrap up the show. It's like, if the issue doesn't directly impact the supporter in the base, then they can easily sweep it away. Whatever facts may or may not be true about any given leader, right? The moment it becomes something that threatens the personal safety of the base, then I think they start to take it personally, and they start getting to that place where they have to draw the line of, I cannot abide by this, right? And I think that this instance, and I wish I had it in front of me. It's 2 episodes now that I've thought of it, and I'm like, I don't have it in front of me. But the mutually competing, often mutually exclusive, often mutually destroying, conflicting statements that this president has made just about the crisis and what has and or has not actually factually happened. This new level of two-facedness that he's exercising on a nearly hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute basis, never mind week-to-week self-contradiction. He does it within the same hour-long news conference. And fun that there's suddenly, all of a sudden, he's all in favor of giving news conferences and the White House press briefing room again, right? After almost 2 years of slowly dismantling that and making them a joke, and then just not having them anymore. He's suddenly back quite a bit. And I'll end with this. I just watched a chunk of yesterday's. I was thinking about this yesterday and meant to do an episode last night, but then didn't for various reasons. But yesterday's press conference in the White House press conference, the traditional, very narrow, I think it used to be part of the bowling alley, if I'm not mistaken, with my White House history, that press briefing room that we're all familiar with was either once a bowling alley or a swimming pool. I think it might have been a swimming pool. And the bowling alley's still there, because I seem to recall images of Obama bowling in it. So yeah, it's probably the swimming pool. I digress. So he's back, and this is his umpteenth one. I don't know how many he's had since suddenly realizing that he should do them. Some headline, I forget where I saw it. It's on one of these tabs I popped open and just kind of scanned through briefly. was speculating. This was an opinion piece, and I didn't see a byline on it. But you should dig it up and find out and read it for yourself. But basically proposed that this article seemed to be someone suggesting that in lieu of his giant stadium rallies, he's decided to do these coronavirus news conferences after years, after literally, shutting down that whole press corps and making it not only rare, but it seemed as if we would never again see the press secretary, whoever it is these days, present and even or introduce the president to give a press conference out of that room. So maybe, who knows? I don't know. That's some opinion pieces floating around out there. I do think he's changed tactics, obviously because the COVID-19 situation has either forced him or his quote handlers to, convince him of changing tactics. And I do think it's really weird and interesting. Others have posited, other talking heads on the news have suggested that because he's spending more time now since like January, he's increasingly spent more time since whenever he created the COVID-19 task force, he's been hanging out with people on the task force more than most of his typical, usual crew of yes persons, of yes men and yes women, and that's caused the inflection, change in the way he's presenting himself and suddenly seeming to take COVID-19 increasingly more serious. But it's like the weird thing about Trump, and I was going to cut it off short, and I've rambled all the way into almost 45 minutes again. I digress. The question remains out there, folks. I'm not pretending to have all the answers. I do think that there are, I want to ask questions and encourage you to think about it. Within the realm of possibility, isn't it that he might have, for whatever complex reasons Donald Trump might have had to do it, let himself and his administration be weak? Despite all his talk about being a strong man and about what we need strength, if you really step away from it and look at his response was weak AF. And I don't know, right along with the now like $3 billion, multiple billions of dollars worth, 3 different arms deals that he's made. It seems to me like something a hijacked, co-opted, corrupted, turned into a puppet, if not always had been a puppet type of politician would do. As opposed to this fighter who's going to fight. We've already drawn a line with Trump, right? He most definitely isn't the Messiah. And there are people who still will argue that. I mean, some other interesting headline posting that I saw recently, and I don't remember if I saw this on Facebook or on a news source, but someone telling the story claiming that directly in front of them, another person prayed to Donald Trump as divine godhead of government. And so that's a thing. But I frankly propose to the world, to the clusterfuck mess of public discourse around Trump, we should definitely draw the line. Messiah, he is categorically not. Because a real, genuine, authentic, motherfucking Messiah would be A, doing fun things like turning water into wine. B, healing people for free. C, housing the homeless for free, etc., etc., etc. And he's not doing that, right? He definitely seems to be doing things that are making money for Big Pharma and are getting a lot of people sick.
And that is the latest madness from behind the orange wall. Thank you for listening to GMT, a special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast. Stay woke, Trumptopia. Stay woke.